Why are used Volkswagens so cheap? 50–60% of their value gone in 4 or 5 years. We're gonna break into 5 major reasons why used Volkswagens are so cheap on the used car market. Let's get into it now. Life's too short to drive boring cars. One of the main reasons why they're so cheap on the used car market goes back to about 2015. Have you ever heard of a scandal called the Dieselgate scandal? Here we're looking at a Volkswagen Golf. Beautiful little car. And a lot of these vehicles that Volkswagen was putting out actually had a TDI, a turbo diesel engine. And a lot of people love them. They were economical, they were powerful. On paper, they have great numbers. They go up and down the hills with great performance, and everybody loved the good old-fashioned TDI. The TDIs were actually quite reliable. And it was surprising how good the fuel efficiency was, at least according to testing standards. Once 2015 rolled around, the EPA had a look and found that in fact, wait a minute, there were some test procedures that weren't done properly. Because allegedly, a vehicle, when it was hooked up to the test procedure to spit out the amount of nitrogen oxide results, they found that they were well below the standards and they were green lighted. As soon as the vehicle was disconnected from the test equipment, sent off to the customer, the emissions coming out of the tailpipe of this vehicle was drastically worse, as much as 40 times the allowable numbers that you would set by the EPA standards. So a lot of people looked at these great little TDI engines and thought, hey, these are great cars. You get all the great technology, easy access, you get a beautiful little car, and a lot of people really love these little Golfs, Jettas, and even a lot of the other brands that were associated with VAG, like Porsche and Audi, were also pulled into the mix because allegedly 11 million vehicles across the globe were afflicted with some kind of cheat equipment. And so once Volkswagen VAG Group was found out to be cheating on these test standards, the reality is a lot of these cars and SUVs didn't get even near to what the expected results were in terms of emissions regulations. And sadly, as a result, millions of people had to be compensated. As a matter of fact, the head player at Volkswagen is still dealing with the court challenges, and heads are still potentially rolling. So while this seems like only 10 years ago, there is still a reputational issue that still hangs around and people just can't get over it. So with that reputation, a lot of people look at these vehicles and just associate that level of trust or lack thereof to the brand. And unfortunately now, that's why a lot of these used vehicles are down in the proverbial toilet. Volkswagen has some reputable engines. The 2.5 is a good engine, as well as many TDIs, ironically, a lot of people love. And many customers who own Volkswagens appreciate the enthusiast vehicles. The Volkswagen, like the Volkswagen Golf R, like these, people love them and are willing to look over some of the shortcomings. But ultimately, reliability is one of the biggest challenges for Volkswagen, and that's in fact one of the bottom of the barrels and major reasons why in fact the reputation is so rough and used car prices are low. According to Consumer Reports, Volkswagen ranks very low overall with a 25 of 100 score, and the Volkswagen Taos, like this little SUV in front of us, actually ranks at an absolute abysmal 18 out of 100. RepairPal also ranks them about 12 out of 32 and only costs an average of $676 per year for servicing costs. And when you compare that to $652 across all vehicles, it's actually fairly reasonable. JD Power, unfortunately, in 2025 ranks Volkswagen as literally one of the very bottom, even worse in fact than Range Rover, Jaguar, and the likes. And a lot of that just means that dependability after 3 years is absolutely abysmal as well. Many people report that the 2-liter turbocharged engine has been the source of many catastrophic failures, heavy oil consumption, coolant leaks, you name it. In fact, most Volkswagen engines are also interference engines. So if you skip a cog and you don't take care of some of the older engines with the timing belt, or even some of the newer engines with the timing chain, you can have a catastrophic collision with valves and pistons, resulting in a catastrophic engine failure with $10–15,000 repair bill. Many Volkswagens also rock what they call the DSG, and it's their dual clutch gearbox. That's very, very maintenance intensive, very expensive when it fails. And again, they're lovely when they're working well, but when they fail, they get extraordinarily pricey. And if you have to replace them, just ask an owner of a Porsche Macan what it's all about to replace a transmission. It's going to be huge dollars. Many more frequent problems as well. Water pumps are problematic. Now a lot of customers are finding they should proactively replace them at 60–70,000 miles, because if they fail and you result in a catastrophic overheating condition, now you have a blown head gasket, yet another partial engine rebuild, which is not uncommon for many Volkswagen owners. And I've owned a couple of Volkswagens back in history, and I can tell you definitely electrical systems are a major issue. Whether you have issues with lighting, infotainment problems, mirrors, regulators that don't work all the time or intermittently, those are actually common problems that many owners of Volkswagens experience over the years. And I have personally seen that. I had a Passat many years ago. Sunroof would work sometimes, other times not. Regulator would work, other times not. Sometimes the gauges, you give it a hit on the dash and it would light up again. Just things like that are weird. As well as the Volkswagen Taos, there was fuel delivery issues as well, and there was a major recall for that. So the quality control for a lot of Volkswagens, especially new stuff, and the older vehicles just tend to start burning oil, means that a lot of people are shy for buying used Volkswagens, and the ultimate reliability king, this is not. Right here's the next reason why a lot of used Volkswagens are so cheap, even though they may not be the most reliable. When you're looking at incentives like this everywhere, 0%, 1.9%, 2%, a lot of people just look, hey, I can get the latest in technology, I can get the latest and greatest in the Volkswagen, and with all of these incentives and deals, why would I want to risk and buy a 4 or 5-year-old Volkswagen that has no more warranty left? Rather, I'll just take one of those incentives and buy myself a brand new car. And everybody knows that Taos is not the most reputable vehicle for reliability, but you know what? You drive it for 3 or 4 years, you sell it, you lose half your value, but guess what? Now, in many cases, people are just starting to lease these vehicles, or they look at the cost by owning this for 10 years and the maintenance differential costs, and they decide, you know what? I'll take that loss on depreciation for a lower cost Volkswagen like this that costs $26,000, and it might be money in the bank. Nobody says it's good financial sense, but people are making that decision to buy with a lot of incentives and a lot of deals right now. And when you look at a lot of the electrified vehicles, the ID4 has absolutely amazing incentives on it right now. Nobody's buying the electrified Volkswagen products. The ID4 and the ID Buzz are also equally not selling particularly well. So you're getting massive discounts. You're always worth buying one of these vehicles used, because the electrified vehicles definitely are so expensive brand new. That's why they're heavily incentivized. But people are making a decision, whether it's electric, whether it's gas, they're buying these vehicles new because of the massive incentives. And of course, that helps pushing the prices down on the used cars. Another reason a lot of people just decide to elect not to buy these cars on the used car market, or of course it drives prices down, is because of the cost of ownership and maintenance costs. I mean, a lot of the Euro parts, everybody knows European vehicles generally cost more money. Brakes don't wear as well on Volkswagens. That's kind of a common fact. Every time you're doing a full set brake change, you're looking at $500, $800, maybe $1,000. Of course, front end work. A lot of times the front end suspension just does not seem to be all that up to snuff. As a matter of fact, the drive axles, clunk, 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 when you're turning the corner, that's a surefire sign that you have a bad axle issue or bearings. Of course, exhaust parts. A lot of the components may be charged for Euro prices, but aren't always the best in terms of overall quality. And just generally, part breaks off here, this is going to cost you more money. This is going to cost more money. Sourced parts like that or like that tend to be harder to find, and they always are going to be a lot more money. Now, a great little car like this, the Volkswagen GLI, is actually one of my personal favorites if you're going to buy a Volkswagen, because you can step it up and get a manual gearbox or the automatic transmission. Now, if that auto transmission fails, that's going to be $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 to replace. On top of it, you're dealing with more expensive oil services, more frequent oil services, and generally everything is a little bit more money. Because it's a manual option in the GLI, I would definitely opt up for that. That's one less failure point. But right here is one of the most popular models, of course, in the Volkswagen lineup, and one of my personal favorites, the Volkswagen GTI. Now, the GTI and the Golf R are some personal favorites, and certainly are some of the enthusiast choices. It's a hot little hatchback. The GTI, of course, is one of those. Looks sporty, looks spirited, it's fun to drive. Look at the big wheels on there, red calipers. It's a gorgeous unit. Has great updates. It doesn't look as simplistic, but I like all that red trim on there. It definitely gives it a beefier look and more accents. Big sunroof on top. These are absolutely gorgeous, but the DSG gearbox needs servicing every 30, 40,000 miles, and if you don't, you're going to wave bye-bye to tens of thousands of dollars, because it's a very expensive dual clutch gearbox in some of these vehicles, the GTI or the Golf R, and if you don't look after them, they're going to cost you a huge amount of money. And of course, people just tend to shy away from that. And when they don't know what to expect, or the assumption, of course, of high cost of repairs and reliability challenges, most people just want something simple, low cost, cheap oil changes, cheap brakes, things that don't break, things that don't act weird, just reliable. That's what people want. Older, used Volkswagens quite often get brushed off and therefore the prices drop like a rock. Another reason they're cheap on the used car market is when you look at some of these SUVs, they've been around for a while, they haven't changed all that much, and let's be honest, there's a lot of stiff competition, whether you're looking at cars, SUVs, like this even Jetta has been around forever, and some people love theirs, they're stalwart, but they are kind of bland. They often go to cars like Toyotas, a little bit more dependable, and certainly when you're looking at a used vehicle, a lot of people go with the Hondas and the Toyotas. And with such stiff competition, you know, Nissan produces a small, cost-effective car. Sure, the CVT transmission's a little flaky, but the rest of the car is very reliable and very cheap to run. Hondas, lots of people buy Hondas on the used car market. They're very reliable, they're very trustworthy. CVTs, manuals, people love them. They're worth a fortune on the used car market, but people buy those instead of a lot of the Volkswagens. Even Subarus, people like to buy Subarus because they have the great all-wheel drive system, symmetrical style in the house. Yeah, you get some cheap plastic, but at the end of the day, they're fairly reliable. Now, cars like this also depreciate pretty hard. When you're looking at competition, you compare the likes of Chevy, Dodge, Chrysler. It's no shocker why those cars are in the same space as cars like Volkswagen, because they carry a similar level of durability and reliability. Not. Even cars like this, the upscale Volkswagen VAG or Volkswagen Audi group, the Audi products are also equally, if not more expensive to run. They've got more complex drivetrains, more powerful drivetrains. Other than some of the TTRS like this, you'd actually find that turbocharged 5-cylinder engine, which is actually a fairly reliable unit, but it does come with that DSG, and unfortunately that does cost some maintenance. Ultimately, when you're looking at buying a used Volkswagen, it's not a surprise why the prices are so low. A lot of people just look at the great competition and they realize, you know what, I don't want to throw my hard-earned dollars on replacement brakes, oil burning technology. I don't want to deal with all kinds of unknown weird electrical gremlins. Buying a Honda means that I can probably put 300,000 or 400,000 miles and not even worry too much about it. And a lot of these regular garden variety vehicles, although they're not that exciting, people just generally gravitate to them. Now, if you like the Volkswagen products, and a lot of people do, there's some enthusiasts that really like the brand. I personally love the Golf Rs and some of those very specific performance-oriented versions, but the rest of the brand is a little bit vague and a little bit bland for me. In 2025, some things have changed. Of course, the market has shifted in the used car and new car market. Less people are buying, largely because of high cost of living, increased costs in vehicles, electrification driving the research and development costs up, meaning that even internal combustion vehicles like these are going up in price. People have less money and they'd rather buy used vehicles. But when they're shopping for used vehicles, they're looking at the tried and true, the specialists, the vehicles, the Hondas, the Toyotas, the Mazdas that are reliable. And like they say, the cream rises to the top, because now even many manufacturers are offering up great incentives to buy used cars. That's right, used cars for 2.49%. This is something we've never seen in the industry. Things are so bleak right now, even on the used car market, that every manufacturer and dealer are offering special offerings in 2025, and therefore Volkswagens, or the vehicles that are slightly less desirable, are going to be pushed further down the loop. And with reliability challenges that we see with Volkswagen, and of course the durability issues, high cost of maintenance, and just oil burning and the reputation, means that people just shop elsewhere. Now with these great incentives from other brands, it just means there's even more competition to play with. And 2025 is an entirely different year than it was even last year or the year before. If you've been looking for a used Volkswagen, make sure you do your homework. And of course, with all of that said, right there you want a great bunch of vehicles that are ultra reliable. Check it out, as well as that list too. You're gonna love it. Hope to see each and every one of you real soon, everybody. See you then. Bye-bye.